Remember when you hadn't heard about Canik? This, I believe, is one of those moments. I try not to get all forgotten weapons on you, but I didn't know a lot about SAR as a brand, and I'm willing to bet that you probably don't know a ton either. So bear with me. I want to establish kind of the history of the brand because we're talking about the SAR9 today, both the Sport, which is the 5.2-inch version, and the SAR9, which is kind of the OG service version that is in service with like the Turkish military and federal police. It passed the NATO testing and all that kind of stuff. But before we get about what the gun is, let's talk about the brand. So Sarsilmaz is not a new brand. SAR is not a new brand. Sarsilmaz got its start way back in like the 1880s and started making firearms back then. Fast forward to now, they had been making a bunch of like hammer-fired guns and the like. They focused more on the US market and spun off the SAR9 to be their US importer. So SAR imports all of the Sarsilmaz guns. I really hope I'm saying that name right. I've never heard somebody say it out loud, so that's a guess. Now, if you believe the marketing, they say that the SAR9 has undergone NATO testing and has gone like 90,000 rounds with acceptable stoppages or whatever. The NATO testing is a rigorous procedure. The CZP01 is another gun that has such a designation. So the SAR9 supposedly has undergone that and did exceptionally well. Now, one thing that you need to keep in mind is that this has Glock DNA, so there's probably a good chance that everything they're saying is true. We'll get more into that here in a bit. So what the SAR9 is a striker-fired gun that is incredibly similar to a Glock platform in how it operates. You notice with the trigger dead as it is here, the trigger stays rested at the rear, but it swings forward when the trigger is live. The takedown tabs are pulled down right over the trigger guard, same as the Glock. And if you look at the internals, they are very, very similar to how a Glock operates. So it's a safe action style pistol similar to a Glock. But what differentiates it from a Glock and not just being a straight up Glock clone is they changed the grip so that the grip angle is more like every other pistol that people are used to shooting. So it takes a different magazine. The trigger housing is retained through the ambi safety. That's right, they re-engineered the trigger housing to be operable with a trigger safety, and it is an operable safety. It is not as good as like a 1911 safety, but it is very usable. And when you're not using the manual safety, it works as an amazing thumb ledge. Like, it's just fantastic to keep your thumb right there. They've got this weird scoop on the frame, and don't fold your thumb down into the scoop because there are many roads to Rome. But if you hold your thumb like this on a pistol, that is the road to Low Left City, and nobody wants to hang out there. Keep your thumb on the safety and you will shoot straight. It'll be great. That was a terrible rhyme. That was not on purpose. Sorry. So staying up top on the gun, it is cut for an RMSC and uses a spacer plate. If you use the RMSC, the sights do co-witness through most of the RMSC footprint optics, but they do offer an adapter for RMRs, but it does elevate the optic quite a bit to be taller than flush on the slide, so these iron sights will not co-witness through RMR style optics. I think that setup on the optics is going to be something that we see increasingly on guns where the slides are milled for RMSC or Delta Point Pro, and then there are plates to get the screw width needed for the RMRs. The gun has amazingly useful slide serrations. There are really deep slide serrations. There's 4 of them on the Sport and 3 of them on the SAR9, but they absolutely just gobble up your flesh so that you can manipulate the slide. And that's a good thing because the spring that they use, the shooting experience is kind of like a DPM where it kind of feels like it dampens recoil, but it locks up hard and it takes quite a bit of force to make the slide move. The night sights that come on the gun, the front sight appears to be a Glock sight with the little hex screw underneath holding the front sight in place. The rear sight, I'm not sure if it's a Glock sight. It kind of looks like a Glock sight, but I couldn't find a definitive answer online. There are a number of sights you can get specifically for the SAR9. I don't know what the footprints are. But honestly, I don't know why you would change them because these are pretty brilliant night sights. There's a high-vis yellow front with a blacked out 2-lamp tritium rear. So there are 3 tritium lamps in the sights out of the box. Coming down to the trigger is very much kind of Glock-like. It's like a clean Glock trigger. You get to the wall, there's a little bit of play as you kind of blow through the first false wall to the reel wall at the back, and then it releases. It's like a duty weight trigger, and the trigger shoe is aluminum, and the dingus does go totally flush on the trigger safety. If you're a left-handed person and you desperately want an ambi gun, I'm sorry, but the slide release is only on the proper side of the pistol, so you'll figure it out, I'm sure. Coming down the grip, it's almost like the people at SAR took like an HK VP9 grip, because it's not only back straps, but there are grip panels on either side that are interchangeable, and it ships with 3 back straps and the 3 different sets of side panels. So if you want a really thin grip, you can do that. This is the medium grip that you see here for the back strap with the fat palm swells on the side, and I think that's probably the best grip. The large back strap kind of puts a big hump at the bottom of the grip, which sort of forces the Glock angle. I wasn't a huge fan of the large back strap, even though I tried it. The grip texture is not very gentle. It's not super aggressive, and it stops right below the mag catch, which if you watch the channel, you know I prefer the texture to run all the way up to the slide. But you can't win them all. You may notice I don't sound incredibly upset when I say that, and that's because the geometry of the pistol is so squared away. It feels like you just took some clay and wrapped it around a magazine and squeezed the gun, and this is what came out. The shape of the grip is basically perfect. It's got finger grooves that are absolutely fantastic, a brilliant undercut under the trigger guard, and it sinks the gun down in your hand. Like, there's none of the rub on the back of the frame a lot of striker guns have. There's no knuckle that you're going to get from gripping the gun, and it points like a traditional gun, not a weirdo alien roll your wrists all the way over Glock. So shooting the guns is actually very pleasant. The guns, like I mentioned, feel like they have like a DPM style recoil buffer in there. They don't feel as punchy as, you know, a lightweight polymer pistol typically does. They actually shoot really well when you're shooting at speed. Most of my shooting was done with Buffalo Creek 115s, which is a super soft shooting range load, and maybe that is of use to you. But the Buffalo Creek ran in the guns no problem at all. When I was doing accuracy testing, I was out of Buffalo Creek, so I used my jacketed hollow points from a rest, and I shot the SAR9, and the accuracy is not quite as good as like a Gen 5 Glock, at least not with my eyes and my ability to pull a trigger straight to the rear. But when I was shooting with freestyle, grouping at 25 yards, I shot a group roughly the same size. That is the benched group right there. This is the offhand group right there. That really speaks to the ergonomics of how the gun is set up, the shape of the trigger. It's very easy to pull straight to the rear, so it was easy for me to get near maximum accuracy out of the pistol based on what my skill is capable of. Now, I did try this with a range of ammo when I was out doing the ammo testing. It was raining, so I don't have amazing footage. Sorry. All right, got some hollow points. These are Federal HST 124s. Okay, already, you see it's hanging up on the feed ramp. It's not seated in the mag right. All right. It doesn't want to feed. Okay. So HSTs. All right. It's not going to happen for him. HSTs don't work. These are Buffalo Creek 147 grains. All right, that one works. No problems. These are critical duty 135 plus Ps. No problem. Let's see if we can make this one work. All right, what if we just put one in the chamber? A magazine. Here we go. Won't feed off slide lock for whatever reason, but does cycle. That is weird. There we go. Yeah, it wouldn't feed the HSTs off the slide lock. I don't know why, but if I put one in the chamber and shot the gun, it would feed them off the magazine. Very bizarre, but here we are. It ran most of the ammo, no problem, other than those HSTs. It just didn't like the shape of that projectile for whatever reason, but they still would feed and shoot. I did find myself wanting more grip on the pistol, but there are decal grips available. So, I mean, if I were shooting this seriously, I would put decal grips on it after I got the back straps on the gun that I wanted. And I think that that would help return the gun even better and probably mitigate some of the muzzle climb, even though it is very mild to shoot. But which of the two guns would I prefer shooting them side by side? While the SAR9 is very gentle shooting, the SAR9 Sport is even gentler shooting. it was noticeably softer. It was just less fatiguing to shoot overall, like shooting them back to back. Like I was working harder with my grip to return the SAR9 than it was with the Sport. The Sport would just kind of snap back into place on its own, and it wasn't as fatiguing to my wrist to kind of keep the gun in place. So if you made me pick between the two of them for recreation, I definitely would pick the SAR9 Sport, but the SAR9 is kind of a nice do-all type gun. As far as accessories are concerned, Black Scorpion Gear is already making holsters for the guns, and so you can get belt ride gear, and I think they're even doing some inside the waistband stuff for the SAR9. There are other holster makers doing stuff for it. The recoil assemblies that you would need to maintain the gun if you shot more than about 5,000 rounds or so, they've got those available on the website. That'll be the part that you probably would need the most if you're running up rounds on the gun, and it's easy to get to. The magazines are selling for about $35 or so, which is a bit of a letdown because, you know, cheap mags are wonderful, and this is kind of in the mid 30s, which kind of is a lot for a value-centric pistol, but at the same time, it's not unreasonable like, you know, SIG or HK magazine prices. So as far as negatives are concerned, yeah, there's a couple. The grip texture, as I mentioned, is probably the biggest gripe about the pistol, but I do love how it feels like it was just sculpted for my hand as it sits, and that geometry goes a long way to making that a minor gripe. But as I mentioned, I would probably get decal grips for it if I were shooting it seriously. And this is a super minor gripe, but the trigger, it has just that tiny little bit of creep with that first false wall that you kind of roll through. If the wall was a little bit firmer, it'd help probably get more out of it when you're doing precision shooting. But when you're shooting practically, like at speed and stuff like that, you don't even feel it. Like, it's absolutely fine. The gun was brilliant shooting at speed. Now, because I keep mentioning Glocks, this is a negative only relative to Glocks, but the way that the gun, I haven't taken it all the way down to pins and springs, but it looks like you would have to punch out this little pin, pull off the right side safety, pull out the left side safety, then drive a pin across at the front. That'll probably lift the trigger mechanism up out of the gun. I'm guessing, I don't know, because I didn't take it all the way apart. So armor level maintenance is probably a little bit more challenging to do on this gun than say something like a Glock, but even still, that's pretty minor because I don't know why you'd really want to mess with the gun. It comes pretty squared away out of the box. Final negative again with the Glock, it doesn't take Glock magazines, but I think that they were trying to solve the grip question, and Glock magazines having that kind of more exaggerated angle probably couldn't get them the grip that they wanted doing the HK stuff with the back straps and side panels. So I get it, but I know a lot of people love it when a magazine on a gun is the Glock magazine. So final thoughts, people have been asking Glock for years to make a Gen 6 pistol, and it's almost as if SAR was the one who delivered it, because it fixes pretty much everything that people don't like about a Glock, except for maybe the trigger. I mean, it comes with great sights, it's got really great serrations, it's got an optic system that's not quite as janky as the MOS system. It has superior ergonomics. The trigger is a little bit nicer. Lefties, it doesn't have a slide release on this side of the pistol, so sorry. But it does all that at a price point of about $400 to $500. So you get all of these extra features for less than basic Glock Gen 3 money, which is kind of neat. There's a lot of stuff that this gun does well that kind of picks up the torch from the Glock pistols, and it's available at a price that is just downright reasonable. So I do think that if Canik can build a brand and a reputation on making Walther P99 clones, there's no reason SAR couldn't do the very same with the Glocks. If you want to see another video on a budget Glock 19 style gun, you can watch this video on the Ruger RXM here.